Before we begin, I want to ask you for something simple. If you enjoy stories that feel real, stories that remind you of people you've loved, moments you've lived, and memories you never quite forgot, then take a second to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every story shared here is more than entertainment. It's a glimpse into someone's life, a collection of emotions, lessons, and memories that continue to echo long after the final chapter ends. And today's story is one I'll never forget. Even now, years later, there are moments when I close my eyes and find myself standing right back in those memories as if no time has passed at all. Some memories fade. That's the natural order of life. The details disappear first. The exact words people spoke, the clothes they wore, the weather on a particular afternoon. Eventually, all that's left is a vague impression, like an old photograph that's been left in the sun for too long. But then there are the memories that refuse to disappear. The ones that remain vivid no matter how many years go by. The ones that return unexpectedly when you hear a certain song, smell a familiar scent, or walk past a place you haven't seen in decades. This is one of those memories. My name is Nora, and what I'm about to tell you is not simply a story. It's a chapter of my life that shaped who I became. At the time, I didn't understand how important those days were. Most of us don't. We live inside our happiest moments without realizing they're special. We assume they'll always be there. We think tomorrow will look exactly like today. But life has a way of teaching us otherwise. I was 18 years old when this chapter began. 18 is a strange age. You're old enough to feel independent but young enough to underestimate how much you still have to learn. You think you've figured out the world. You have opinions about everything. You make plans for the future as though life will follow the script you've written for it. I was exactly like that. Confident, hopeful, certain, or at least I thought I was. Back then I lived in Italy. When people hear that, they often imagine postcards, ancient buildings, historic landmarks, tourists taking photographs. But for me, Italy wasn't a destination. It was home. It was the backdrop to every childhood memory I had ever made. The streets weren't simply roads connecting places. They were living pieces of history. Every stone seemed to carry a story. Every narrow alley felt like it had witnessed generations of laughter, heartbreak, celebrations, and goodbyes. In the mornings, sunlight poured across the old buildings and painted everything in warm shades of gold. Shopkeepers greeted one another like old friends. The scent of fresh bread drifted from neighborhood bakeries. The world seemed to wake slowly and peacefully. Evenings were equally beautiful. The sky would turn shades of orange and pink as families gathered for dinner. Conversations floated through open windows. The air felt calmer, somehow softer. Looking back now, I realize how much those surroundings shaped me. At 18, however, I barely noticed. When something has always been part of your life, you rarely stop to appreciate it. You simply accept it as normal. And normal was exactly how I viewed my life. Especially my family. If someone had asked me then whether I had a good family, I wouldn't have hesitated for a second. I would have said yes. Without question. Without doubt. My family wasn't perfect. No family is. We argued sometimes. We disagreed. We annoyed one another. But beneath all of that was something solid. Something dependable. Love. Real love. The kind that doesn't need constant announcements. The kind that quietly shows up every day. My father was the foundation of our family. He was a businessman who approached life with remarkable discipline. Everything about him seemed organized. His schedule. His habits. His decisions. Even the way he spoke felt carefully considered. He wasn't the type of person who talked just to fill silence. When he said something, people listened. Not because he demanded attention but because his words carried meaning. As a child, I often saw him as serious. Maybe even intimidating at times. But as I grew older, I began to understand him better. His seriousness wasn't coldness. It was responsibility. Every long workday. Every sacrifice. Every difficult decision. He carried those burdens willingly because he loved us. And that love appeared in countless small ways. The way he always made sure we had what we needed. The way he planned for the future. The way he quietly protected our family from worries we never even knew existed. Then there was my mother. If my father was structure, my mother was warmth. She worked as an interior designer, though that title never seemed large enough to describe her. She had a gift, an extraordinary ability to see possibilities where other people saw emptiness. She could walk into a completely bare room and imagine something beautiful, a space filled with comfort, color, personality, life. But her greatest creation wasn't any room she designed. It was our home. She somehow made every corner of it feel welcoming. Friends loved visiting because they instantly felt comfortable. Family gatherings always seemed full of laughter. Even ordinary evenings felt special when she was around. My mother had a way of making people feel seen. If someone was sad, she noticed. If someone was worried, she noticed. If someone needed encouragement, she noticed. It was as though her heart had an extra sense that allowed her to understand emotions before anyone spoke them aloud. Together, my parents balanced each other perfectly. Where my father provided stability, my mother provided warmth. Where he focused on solutions, she focused on feelings. Where he built structure, she filled it with life. As a result, our home felt safe. Not just physically safe, emotionally safe. And that's a rare thing. What made our family even more special was how intentional we were about spending time together. Dinner wasn't something we rushed through. It wasn't a quick meal eaten in separate rooms. It was an event. Every evening, we gathered around the same table. We talked about our days. We laughed. We shared stories. Sometimes the conversations were meaningful. Sometimes they were completely ridiculous. But we were together, fully present. Looking back, I realize many families never experience that consistency. Life gets busy. Schedules conflict. People drift apart. But my parents protected those moments fiercely. At the time, I assumed every family operated the same way. I couldn't have been more wrong. Then there were my brothers, Joseph and Anthony, twins, 2 years older than me, and in many ways my first heroes. Being the youngest child came with certain privileges. It also came with endless teasing. My brothers seemed to make it their personal mission to embarrass me whenever possible. If I liked someone, they found out. If I made a mistake, they never let me forget it. If I overreacted to something, which happened often, they treated it like comedy material for weeks. I pretended to be annoyed. Most of the time, I genuinely was annoyed. But deep down, I loved having them around. Because despite all the teasing, they were fiercely protective. No one could make fun of me except them. That was the unspoken rule. The moment someone else crossed a line, my brothers became completely different people. Serious, alert, protective. I remember one occasion at school when another student made a cruel comment toward me. By the end of the day, both Joseph and Anthony somehow knew about it. To this day, I have no idea how information traveled so quickly. What I do know is that they immediately stepped in. Not through violence, not through threats, but through presence. The situation disappeared almost overnight, and I never forgot how safe that made me feel. When you're young, you don't fully appreciate protection. You simply assume it will always be there. You don't realize it's a gift until life eventually teaches you otherwise. One of my favorite memories from those years happened on a completely ordinary afternoon. Nothing extraordinary occurred. No celebration. No holiday. No important event. Just an ordinary day. The kind of day most people would forget. Yet somehow I never did. Sunlight spilled through the living room windows, filling the space with a warm golden glow. The house was unusually quiet. Curious, I walked into the living room and found Joseph and Anthony sitting on the couch, completely absorbed in a movie. The level of concentration on their faces was almost impressive. I stood there for a moment watching them. Neither noticed me. That gave me an idea. Terrible idea. The kind younger sisters specialize in. Slowly I stepped closer. Then I waved my hand directly in front of Joseph's face. Nothing. Not even a blink. He remained focused on the screen. Anthony, however, reacted instantly. Without taking his eyes off the television, he grabbed a pillow and launched it in my direction. The pillow hit me squarely in the shoulder. I gasped dramatically. "Did you just attack me?" Anthony shrugged. "You deserved it." "For what?" "For existing loudly." Joseph finally laughed. And just like that, the movie no longer mattered. Within minutes, we were arguing about absolutely nothing. Making jokes. Interrupting one another. Throwing random comments at the screen. Creating our own entertainment. At some point, I sat between them on the couch. Not because anyone invited me. Not because anyone asked. It simply happened naturally. That's what family felt like back then. Belonging without effort. Comfort without conditions. Love without needing explanations. As I sat there laughing with my brothers, I had no idea that years later this ordinary afternoon would become one of the memories I treasured most. Because that's the strange thing about life. The moments that shape us are rarely the dramatic ones. They're often the quiet afternoons, the shared laughter, the ordinary days we assume will never end. And at 18 years old, surrounded by the people I loved most, I truly believe they never would.